Well, welcome to this webcast. Good to see you. My name is Jonathan Foust. Thank you for making the time to be here. I hope you find this helpful. I think this is going to be kind of a juicy talk. I've been thinking about this for a while and really happy to share it with you. Before we do that, though, we're going to have a short meditation. And before that, some acknowledgments. First of all, a thank you to Rita Moran, our mindful movement teacher. If you're wanting to build in some mindful movement as part of your Monday night flow, you can go to my Facebook page or website to get the link for that Zoom class. That starts at 6:30 Eastern Standard Time, which will bring you right up to here, 7:30 Eastern Standard Time, and then into the meditation and talk. Also, I'd like to thank the Insight Meditation Community of Washington for hosting this class, and to our producer, Glenn Harrison, the maestro who makes it happen. I have a mailing list if you're interested in signing up. I share a couple times a year a compendium of talks, plus all my best photography to that date. And just to say, all these talks are available online, YouTube, Facebook, everywhere. So that's that. And finally, this is all offered in the tradition of what's called dana, that is to say, generosity. The teachings are considered priceless, therefore there's no charge. And I've received so much through the generous offerings of other teachers. It's made a big difference in my life, and I'm really happy to participate in this way. And if you feel inspired to support this, thank you. I really appreciate that. Truly. So, before we launch into our talk, this is into the meditation and talk. This is going to be a talk on the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you, with all the variations of different traditions and how that relates to mindfulness. And how it basically relates to mindfulness is that it calls on compassion, it calls on interconnectedness, it calls on loving kindness, and it calls on non-harming. So I thought before we move into our meditation, we might take a little bit of time to slow down the breath and sense inward. If you like, you can close your eyes. You might let your body move around a little bit, kind of as an act of kindness toward yourself. How does your body want you to move? Any little glitches you need to get out of your nervous system before we start? And there's a beautiful reflection that's often done at the end of meditation retreats, but it's really powerful sometimes, done before a meditation or even after. And it's referred to as the offering of merit. And while this meditation will be only about 12 minutes, you might take a moment with the eyes closed to offer the benefit of your practice. Whatever benefit may come out of this, offer it to yourself. May this practice further an opening into ease in your path. May this practice be of benefit to those you most care about. And may this be a benefit to all in some way. And with that, coming into an awareness of here and now, you might open your attention to the sounds around you. It's a beautiful way to move into meditation. Just notice the sounds. And is it possible to listen to the sounds like you would listen to music? Is it possible to soften any sense of naming what the sounds are, but actually to experience just the direct vibration of the sounds, the experience of your eardrums? And you may notice there's a quality of attention here, a quality of relaxation, and a quality of receptivity. aware of what's happening and aware of just receiving the direct experience of the vibrations of sound. Now you might explore the following. Is it possible to notice the narrative of your mind in the same way? There's a flow of sound and there's a flow of commentary. Is it possible to be the observer of this? As you are aware of being aware, you might also explore softening more intimately inside. Is it possible to soften any little micro expressions in the muscles of the face? Could you feel your face like the face of a marble statue? Could you bring awareness to the inside of your mouth and let your tongue relax in such a way that it fills your lower jaw, softening the jaw away from the skull itself? Can you feel the weight of the arms? Sensing down through the elbows, and down through the wrists, and sensing from the inside out the palms and space inside the thumbs, fingers. Can you sense the delicacy of the natural flowing breath in your belly? And could you, for the next 3 exhalations, soften your belly even more with each breath moving out? And can you sense from the inside out the volume and the weight of your legs, from the hips down through the knees? The knees down through the ankles. The soles of the feet and the heels. And sensing from the inside out the whole body, from the crown of the head down to the soles of the feet, and just sensing right now, is there anything inside that could soften? Is there anything inside that could relax or let go? You might again open to the sound vibrations. Or if you prefer, you might bring your attention to this natural sense of the breath on the inside, wherever you feel it the most predominant or wherever it attracts you. And for these next few minutes, let yourself return again and again to this sense of here and now, this timeless moment. When you notice the mind lost in a narrative, is it possible to meet that moment with a sense of compassion? Perhaps a sense of celebration. You just woke up. And let your attention come back to the senses. And you might look for pleasure. Can you train the mind to find pleasure in waking up and coming back? Again and again, re-arriving, receiving the moment. In these remaining minutes, you might refresh your practice, just sensing again, is there anything inside that could soften or relax or let go? If you bring your attention to the anchor of sound vibrations or the anchor of the breath, how much more could you soften and receive? Shifting your awareness from making your experience happen to letting your experience happen. In this remaining minute or so, you might inquire now both within the mind and within the felt sense of the here and now in the body, is there anything that could soften or let go or relax? Is there anything that could relax or soften or let go even more? And for these remaining moments, imagine you could let all effort fall away and just sense, who are you in the absence of effort? May these moments of presence be deeply healing. May they be of benefit to you and your continued path, to those in your inner circle, and to all beings. You might like to now let your head drift a little bit to the left and right. Let your body move, adjust, shift in any way that feels good for you as you begin your transition. Welcome back. I love comedy. And as a kid, like many kids my age, the main comedian out there was Bill Cosby. And I remember he had this one line. He was talking about the golden rule. And he said, the rule in my house was, do unto others before they do unto you. And with two brothers, that was sage advice for me, but I remember being so pleased with myself that I got the joke way back when. I'd like to talk a little bit about the Golden Rule. And as I've been reflecting on this, I've been reflecting on the kind of the early part of my life when I first heard about this. And as I mentioned in a recent talk, I spent a lot of time on tractors in the first 25 years of my life. Growing up on a farm, you just start driving tractors right away. I remember having to stand up to have enough weight to push in the clutch on our tractor. And driving a tractor is the perfect meditation experience. You have to pay attention, but you also get a sense of the flow. Recently, I shared how, as I was mowing the lawn as a young kid, I had this deep recognition of death and impermanence. And I had another insight on the on the lawnmower when I was a kid. And that was the Golden Rule. Do unto others as they would have you do unto you. I don't know where I heard it, probably at the Quaker meeting or something like that. And I remember it was this revelation of like, that's it. That would be a perfect world. Why don't we all do that? And there's something really interesting about this, I find. And that is how certain truths are so simple a child can grasp it, and yet they are incredibly complex. And you could say it's the same thing around the Four Noble Truths, the four essential principles that come in Buddhism. Number one, stress and suffering and dissatisfaction are part of the human experience. Number two, stress, dissatisfaction, and suffering have a cause, and the cause has to do with clinging and identification. Number three, the solution is to let go. And four, that there's a path that supports you in this unfolding into letting go. If I had heard that as a kid, I would have been thinking about that on the lawnmower as I was driving around our many, many acres. And there's a beautiful story about this one monk. At the end of his life, an old monk, he apologized to his students. He said, "I'm so sorry, I never got beyond the Four Noble Truths in my teaching to you." So at least 8 major religions have a version of the Golden Rule. I won't read them all, but Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism, Jainism, Confucianism, Judaism, Sikhism, they all essentially say the same thing. Either they're stated in a positive or a negative. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, or what is hateful to you, do not do unto your neighbor. There's a beautiful thing that in the Talmud, and again, anything I say here could be deeply distorted, where it says, what is hateful to you, do not do unto your neighbor. This is the whole Torah. All the rest is commentary. What a powerful, powerful thing. So it's so helpful for me to keep remembering this. It's so simple, but like everything, it's the simple things that are the most transformative and the simple things that are the easiest things to forget. But what I'd like to talk about is how mindfulness is reflected in the Golden Rule. It's number one, the cultivation of Karuna or compassion. Number two, it's the understanding of what's called dependent origination, or the interconnectedness of everything. And three, it's about cultivating metta, loving kindness. And four, it's about cultivating what's called Ahimsa, or the principle of non-harming. Compassion is a fascinating thing. And there's one scene from a movie I love. If you've ever seen the movie Breaking Away, it's a classic. It's such a classic movie. It's great. It's set in Bloomington, Indiana, and it's about a high school kid who's kind of a dreamer. And he gets very, very deeply into different things, and he gets very into Italian bicycle riders, and he does everything in his power to emulate them. He's studying Italian. He starts speaking with Italian accents. He's wearing Italian-style clothes, and his poor father just doesn't get it or get him at all. At one point, his father says, complains to his wife. He goes, he's never tired. He's never miserable. His wife says, he's young. He says, well, when I was young, I was tired and miserable. But he drives his father crazy. One morning he comes in and he goes, buongiorno, papa. And he says, I'm not your papa, I'm your father. But there's one touching moment. I don't know if this is communicating, but there's one touching moment. His father is really frustrated and takes his anger out on his son, and his son just starts sobbing and hugs him. And his father says, I didn't mean for you to be this miserable. Just a little bit is all I asked for. But it was so touching in that scene, as funny as it was the response to suffering. And as soon as he saw his son deeply suffering, everything changed for him. You might just take a moment now and think of someone who you know is suffering. And just notice what it feels like as soon as you turn your attention to them. Just sense how their desire for happiness is the same as your own. And what would you wish for if you were in their position? This sensitivity to compassion, the capacity to feel what another person is feeling and to resonate with their suffering and to be with the response to the suffering, is an essential part of what it means to be alive, an essential part of what it means to be awake, an essential part of what it means to be mindful. We naturally start to recognize that all beings, like ourselves, are wanting happiness and wanting to avoid pain. And compassion opens up our self-centeredness to a broader sense of connection, if you will. So compassion is actually a practice. It's a training. And there's sort of like informal training. You know, when you sit and you quietly repeat the phrases, may you feel free from suffering, may you feel peace. When you direct this toward yourself, toward your loved ones, toward strangers, toward the difficult people in your life, that's part of the formal practice. And it's a training. But then there's the informal practice where you cultivate what it's like to respond to life. A story I like to tell, again, I don't know if this is true, but I like to think it is. It's a story of a woman who was on a city bus, and a very disoriented homeless guy got on the bus and just kind of really disheveled. And he didn't have the right change. He got in, flared up in his real anger toward the bus driver when they were arguing over change and entry on the bus. And everyone was getting really nervous and looking for the exit, and the bus didn't have an exit. She could feel the palpable tension in the bus. And she thought, no one's praying for this guy. And she just very quietly, may you feel peace. May you feel peace right now. May you feel happy. And just quietly offered that. As the story goes, after he settled down and found the right change, and as he's shuffling back to the back of the bus, he paused as he walked by her and he said, "Thank you, I feel better now." Again, I don't know if that's true, but I like to think it is. And when we look at interconnectedness, I do think it is. We cannot measure the impact of kindness and compassion in the world. One person told me that he has a daily act of kindness through email. Every day he'll just send an email to a friend, a note of encouragement. It's about inclining the mind toward doing toward others as we would like to have them do unto you. The more we do that, the more connected we feel, and the more you'll feel a sense of interconnectedness of life. So, back to running farm equipment. Thanks for bearing with me. When I was in college, I really wanted to refresh my meditation practice, and I wanted to get out of town. I thought, wouldn't it be amazing if I could find a farm where I could where I could work and live and get my practice going. Living in the city didn't work for me. Magically, I landed on a farm where a former graduate of my college took over his dad's farm when his dad died. And he was very into meditation, the same kind of meditation I was, transcendental meditation at that time. So I spent the next many years, like 4 years, managing the livestock and helping to run a 1,000-acre farm. We had corn, soybeans, and wheat primarily, and 1,000 acres is a lot. We also had 500 hogs that I was in charge of, and farming is kind of dramatic. You have these windows when you really have to focus and you really have to perform, because these are weather windows or opportunities for planting or harvest, where you just have to be there. In the spring, you've got plowing, disking, mulching, and planting. And then harvesting in the fall is really touchy, because if it's too early and the grains are still kind of wet, then it costs a lot to dry them at the dryers. And if you wait too long, then you risk bad weather. Maybe you get snow and you can't get in there to harvest, or you get a really, really big rain and it's too muddy to get in and the crops rot. It's a challenging way to live. But one of the most fascinating farm implements, and I would say a lot of farmers are really into farming because of the toys. I mean, these amazing, amazing toys, amazing tractors. But one of the most interesting ones is running a combine. And you may have seen these. They look like a house, and if it's harvesting corn, it has these tines that go between the rows. If it's soybeans or wheat, there's a reel. So harvesting wheat one day, and sitting in driving a combine is like driving a house and sitting at the second story window. You're in a little glass box. It's with an orthopedic chair, air conditioning, music, which is kind of nice. You have a steering wheel that moves back and forth so you can lean forward and look at the platform. There's a flashing red light right in the middle that lets you know if there's a warning sign. It has hydrostatic transmission right here on one little lever with your finger, so you can slow down, speed up. Below you, there is a platform which you lift and lower, and you do that through another lever as to how close you get to the ground. And then another level which has the reel that sort of like guides the wheat over the sickle bar mower. On your left, there's a whole panel of lights that reads sensors on all the bearings to let you know if there's any issue. And then to your right, you have the auger for offloading the wheat. And if you're really, really on top of it, you are harvesting as managing everything that's coming in. And then a truck will come up on your right, and then you'll engage the auger, so you're offloading the wheat and then slowing down and speeding up to fill the front and back of the truck. And then in the back, you have a fan that kind of blows the chaff out, which is lighter than the seeds. And you've got to get that dialed in just right, because if it's too strong, you're blowing seeds out the back. And if it's not strong enough, then you've got a lot of chaff in the wheat, and then that costs money to get that out later. So it's incredible driving this thing, because you are managing the ground speed, the platform height, the reel height. You're checking all the bearing lights. You're lining up the combine on the line, and you've got to be paying attention to the rear view mirror, because if a sickle breaks on the sickle bar, it's not going to be cutting all the soybeans. And I just remember having this experience of all these interdependent parts all happening at the same time, requiring intense focus, but at the same time, the contours of the hills and the light. And I just imagined that 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 500 years ago, people out there with their scythes, and how with this machine, I was harvesting more in an hour than a whole crew could do in one full day when the technology works. Why am I telling you this? Well, it was really fun driving a combine, but also it's about the interdependency of everything. If you think about, for example, if you had a cup of coffee this morning, just think of that cup of coffee that you had. And just take a moment and reflect. Can you imagine the hands that were cultivating the coffee plant? And can you imagine the hands that harvested, that transported, that roasted it, that prepared it, that delivered it to you? The interdependence of life is extraordinary, and we tend not to see it. There's a story of a guy who decided to build a toaster from scratch, and he spent, I think, 2 years smelting iron and so forth. It was really, really quite an extraordinary thing. But it's this web of connection. When you think about how your coffee reached you, if it's coffee, the farmers, transport workers, shopkeepers, countless lives are involved in that one act of making a cup of coffee. This teaching on dependent origination, what it reveals is that everything arises due to causes and conditions. And when we recognize the interconnectedness of everything, it helps us to see that our actions ripple outward, that every action influences others and it shapes our own experience. And it's simple in many ways. It's the difference between reacting and responding. It's about pausing before you speak or act and asking yourself, how might this affect the other person? How would I feel if the roles were reversed here? There's a story I ran across of a young mother with her young son, maybe 3 years old, in the supermarket. And the kid was just acting out like crazy, grasping for things, wanting to reach everything and touch it. The mother was getting really frustrated. She was, yelling, "Stop it!" And this woman was observing. It was just like physical violence was just about to arise. And she looked and she said, "How could I be of support?" And one option would be for someone to say, "Could you manage your kid? Could you shut him up?" But what she said is, "Your son looks like such a bright and inquisitive young boy." And the woman stopped and she said, "Well, he is, but he's so much to handle sometimes." And this woman said, "Well, he's got a lot of intelligence and energy and a lot of excitement for life, that's for sure. It must be amazing to see him learning about the world." And as she walked away, she heard the mother say to her son, "When we get home, we're going to make your favorite dessert." Think of the difference, the interconnectedness, that mindful moment of pausing and asking, how would these words land? And then choosing. That's interdependence. I started doing a practice this year, and it's so corny that I resisted it, but I'm really into it. And that is, in my journal, I make a list of what I'm grateful for. And sometimes part of that, I will make a list of people who are kind toward me, or some act of kindness I offered another person. It doesn't take that long. I actually dictate it. But taking those moments just to pause and actually name what you're grateful for, lots of research shows it has an effect. And even though it's a cliche, it still has an effect. So if your actions ripple out and affect others, why not have your actions promote connection? Again, it's about looking for the good, the power of empathy, and the power of the role reversal. So compassion is feeling what others feel and responding. Interconnectedness is the recognition that your actions have an effect. The practice of loving kindness is about cultivating that sense of looking for the good. A little story. This is an old classic teaching story. In a small village, an old baker noticed a beggar sitting outside his shop every morning. Initially, he avoided eye contact, but one day he paused to really see the man. And feeling a pang of compassion, he began leaving him a small loaf of bread beside him each day. One day, the beggar disappeared. Months later, a well-dressed man entered the shop and introduced himself. It was the beggar. He had found work and stability, and he thanked the baker. And this is what he said. More than the bread, it was the kindness behind it that gave me hope. So compassion is not just about giving. It's about seeing others as we see ourselves. And it becomes a very interesting question. Where in your life can you extend a small act of kindness that might lead the world, make a big difference to someone? You might just, if you like, close your eyes just for a moment. Imagine yourself as a well-wisher of all. Take a moment to think of the people in your life that are just naturally so easy to love. And just have that inquiry here, like, what does it feel like when you think about your best friends, your allies? And now you might expand this inquiry a little bit to the people in your life that you feel neutral toward, or just, let's say, just one person. You have no antipathy, but no particular attraction toward them. And just explore the following. This is very brief. Can you imagine this person as a child? Or imagine them facing challenges? And notice the quality of feeling inside if anything shifts. This practice of loving kindness is just sensing these phrases as a trigger. May I feel happy. May I feel healthy. May I live with ease. And imagine that just spreading and radiating out, first to those who are easy. Imagine extending that to this neutral person. May you feel happy. May you feel healthy. May you live with ease. And just for a moment, imagine extending that out to every single being. Those who are coming into form, those who are leaving form, every being, every living being without exception, just for a moment. May you live with ease. If you like, you can deepen your breath. If you like, you can open your eyes. Metta, or loving kindness, expands the heart by this practice of cultivating unconditional goodwill to all beings. It breaks down barriers of self and other, and it creates this sense of universal belonging. And again, there's the formal practice and the informal practice. Chris Voss, who's a FBI negotiator, has a very simple thing where, as a way of training, he just sort of imagines what people are feeling. So if it's the end of a long day and he's talking to a cashier, he'll just say, hard day or long day. And something in that small act of extending your awareness to another person creates that sense of connection. And again, it's a training. It's inclining the mind. And it can be just the practice of small, anonymous acts of kindness. Now, a close cousin to loving kindness is what we call non-harming, or Ahimsa, which is actively cultivating this inquiry into what does it mean to not create harm. Another story. A wise monk was meditating beside a river when he saw a scorpion struggling in the water. And without hesitation, he reached in to save it, but as soon as he touched the scorpion, it stung him. Instinctively, he pulled back, shaking his hand in pain. A few moments later, he tried again, and once more the scorpion stung him, and he withdrew his hand. And a passerby who had been watching laughed and said, "Why do you keep trying? It's the scorpion's nature to sting." And the monk smiled and replied, "Yes, but it's my nature to help." With great care, he used a leaf to lift the scorpion out of the water, and he set it safely on the shore. When we live into this inquiry of what it means to do unto others as you would have them do unto you, it may quite organically take you back to this deep place of non-harming, the desire not to be harmed by others. We spend most of our life either dominating or trying to avoid domination. And when we bring that intention to do no harm, our life can begin to shift. And again, it's very practical. Imagine before you speak, whenever there's conflict, to ask yourself, and these are the questions that are suggested in the question of what it means to practice wise speech, to ask yourself, is what I'm about to say true? Is what I'm about to say kind? Is what I'm about to say helpful? Is what I'm about to say timely? Like, is this a good time? And finally, is what I'm about to say something the other person can truly hear and process? Those are a lot of questions. But I really find it helpful to go back and really sense, is this true? Is this offered in the spirit of kindness? Is this truly helpful? Is it the right time? And is this something this person can hear and process? And imagine if someone had something difficult to share with you, if they took the time to ask those questions to themselves. To live a life of non-harm is a very deep, 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 deep inquiry. Your food, your shopping, your relationships, how might these be causing harm? Or how might you reduce harm to others and to the planet? Ahimsa, which is the practice of non-harming, it kind of underpins the ethical living in Buddhism and all great traditions. It's not only refraining from harmful actions, but actively promoting peace and well-being. And this is just me, and I'm not editorializing, but a big part of my plant-based lifestyle is really about non-harming. Having grown up on farms, having run a 500 head livestock operation for years, I have some karma to pay back, I think. But the idea of not creating suffering through my choices with what I eat is an important part of my life, a very important part of my life. So if just for a moment you might close your eyes and just to take 3 breaths and just to inquire, what might your life be like if you lived more fully into this principle of non-harming? What choices might you make that would reduce harm? And how might you actively promote a greater sense of peace and well-being around you? If you like, you can deepen your breath. And if you like, you can open your eyes. Non-harming, of course, is relative. It's impossible to be on this planet where we are eating and being eaten without creating harm. But it becomes a very deep inquiry, and as I like to say, the more you practice, there's this incredibly positive effect of becoming more sensitive to life. And then it's a very challenging thing that arises as you become more sensitive to life. But it's important to remember that suffering comes from feeling separate. When you start to connect, when you start to inquire into what it means to be in relationship with the world, your capacity to role reverse, to sense what another person is feeling, to sense what another's life is truly like, to explore what it means to do unto others exactly how you would like them to do unto you, the sense of separation can begin to shift. When you see self in other and other in self, you automatically do unto others as if they would do unto you. So simple and so easy to forget. Why don't we close with a short and brief meditation? You might again just close your eyes. And just sensing in your own way where you feel the breath right now. Sensing your capacity for compassion. To feel the suffering of another and to feel that quickening of the heart in response. And sensing this quality of interconnectedness, how you respond, how you react to life has immediate impact on those around you. And when you pause and explore that role reversal, how you might respond in a way that is creating less harm and more of a sense of peace. Sensing your capacity for loving kindness, to be a well-wisher of all. And to sense what it means for you to walk this path of Ahimsa. To live a life that is dedicated to doing minimal harm and actively promoting this sense of aliveness and interconnectedness. If you like, you can deepen your breath. When you're ready, you can open your eyes. Thank you so much for your time and attention. With these challenging times we live in, it's more and more important that we stay plugged into presence. And I'm very, very grateful to share these practices with you, and I hope you find them helpful. Happy trails.